Everybody. So now for the third topic in Lecture 9, we're going to talk a little bit about more advanced MongoDB. So if you were to have cloned the lecture code, you would have noticed that there's two new files that are prefixed with the word advanced, which is a pretty good indicator that we're about to start some more advanced stuff. In our case, we have two files, advanced_mongo.js and advanced_startup_documents.js. So these two files are both just to demonstrate Mongo, and it's more advanced querying and updates. Much like last week, what we did for starting up is that we had, when we ran our server for the first time, or whatever it is we're doing, we created a new table full of new and updated documents so that we had some data that we can query. So for this week, we're writing more advanced documents for our movie database. This time they have ratings and reviews and cast and info, and reviews are another subdocument. And we start off by just creating some reviews and some cast members for a couple of the movies from last week. You'll yet again notice I kind of like Christopher Nolan still. Great mood for him. And let's take a look at what we make. Let's look at the data structure first. For the movie itself, we're going to return an object. We're going to have an object that has these fields. And then for reviews, we're going to have another simple object that has these fields. If you notice for here, we're using a number. Yep. Even though we said we're going to mostly try and use GUIDs or GUIDs or whatever you might call them. For the sake of running through all these demonstrations, we're going to use numbers for the top level document so that I'm not guessing GUIDs every time I want to update for the sake of the video. Alright, so you'll see here we make an Inception movie that has the cast of Inception, and then we add the reviews to Inception, and then we just actually store them all by using an insert many call. What we're doing here is we're actually setting up JavaScript data objects. These are just plain JavaScript arrays right now. These are plain JavaScript objects, so it's nothing really particularly special. We're just using some functions to make it a little easier to push all that data up. Pretty easy to read through by this point. And we export all of the, we export this function, which will actually occur and run the setup so that we can call it in other places. Okay, so after we run the startup, it's just going to, which is the file I just showed you, it's just going to print out all the movies that are there right now. So in our case, what we're going to do is we're actually going to require this advanced MongoJS file in our node terminal just to demonstrate what's going on. Now the reason why we're going to do that is just so that we can interactively play with it, and really that's it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say we want to require our advanced Mongo file, and we're going to store it in advanced. We'll store it in data, or we'll store it in movies actually. So we're going to do require, start off with the /, the dot /, and I called it advanced mongo.js. Now this is going to pull in all those changes. As you can tell, because we input a line of code, it's going to actually run it, and now we're going to have access to a thing called movies. Now in this document we actually export, it's a module itself, so we export all these things about getting movies and so on and so forth, and then advanced stuff. So let's take a look at what we got now that we're printing the array. It only prints one layer deep for these objects, or 2 layers deep for these objects, so the base array is one object, and or maybe it prints a little deeper at this point. But my point being is that it doesn't print like nested reviews and so on and so forth. So for right now, let's just take a look through. We see that we've got an ID of 1 for Inception, 2 for The Last Samurai, 3 for Batman, 4 for Kingsman. All of these are fantastic movies. I really didn't want to deal with any bad movies right now. So we still have things like get all movies are, well, has code completion, that's cool. And we'll be returning promises. Function console.log. So let's just verify here. Console.logs movies. So now we can actually still do the get all movies function. That hasn't really changed much from last week. And we could also do a get movie on, say, say we get movie on number 2, which should be, I forget which one it is. I think that's what we'll see. And we'll just change that to movie. And then when the premise resolves, we'll resolve with movie. Okay, so ID number 2 is The Last Samurai. So those two are very simple still. Now, what if, however, we wanted to find out all the movies that Christopher Nolan directed? Well, when we're using our data module, we're just going to do movies.findby, all those find bys we can do. We're going to say find by, who's a good director to use for this? I think it's Christopher Nolan. It's in a few of them. Yeah, Christopher Nolan. So let me just copy and paste how I spell them so I get it right. So if I wanted to do movies.findbyDirector, the movies, console.log, the movies. There we go. So if I wanted to find all the movies that Christopher Nolan directed that we have stored in the database, we would do the movies.findbyDirector with Christopher Nolan as our parameter, and then it would search through the movies and return everything that Christopher Nolan has directed. But how exactly do we go about doing that? Well, obviously, let's take a look at our code here. The first thing we do is if we don't have a director name, we're going to return a rejected promise. Now that we're using promises everywhere, it's easier to return a rejected promise so that we know we're always going to get promises when arguments are wrong, and that we don't have to worry about trying and catching things and then returning failed promises if we get to a certain point in the function. So now, even if I did find by director and then I just did nobody, which I'll show you, the promise will never fulfill successfully, and instead we'd be using the second parameter of console.error. That'll just run it. And this is an error. You must provide a director name. It corresponds to the second parameter in the .then function, because we returned a rejected promise. But now that, when we actually do Christopher Nolan, we have our arguments proper. Now, when you want to query on a subdocument field, you actually just provide the string name with the periods in it describing what field you want to query on for a match. So in our case, our movies are stored with an info field, and the info field has another field called director on it. Because we wanted to find on that director, we just do info period director, so info.director, and then we say the director's name, and we get an array of those results, or rather we get a cursor to those results, which we call .toArray on. And the .toArray, like previously, returns a promise. So when we just want to find on a subdocument field, you just describe the whole path down until you get to the field that you want to match on. When you wanted to find by ratings, what you would do is pass by an array of ratings that we search for. Not the most useful case for passing arrays, but let's just say movies.findByRatings, and we'll say ratings of 5 and ratings of, let's scroll all the way up, 4.5. Oh, I forgot the open thing. .then, and I'm just going to start writing console.log as a shorthand and console.error, because those will print out anything that's passed to them. Now that we pass by, do the find by rating, we get everything that matches in a 4.5 rating or a 5 rating. Now that's because what we can do is we can pass, instead of passing just data to match on, we could also pass, when we do a find call, an object that describes an operation we want to do. Now what we can do is we can pass by the operation of $in. Now $in, what it will do is it'll say if the value of rating for this document, it'll go through every document and say if the rating field is in the provided array, it's a match. So when we pass by 3.2 and 5, what happened was we said if the rating is in an array which contains 3.2 or 5, it's a matching document. Hence why we get these, well, here we did 4.5 and 5. But if we were to do 3.2 and 5, we'd get all those documents that are matching there. We get Kingsman and we get Batman: The Dark Knight Rises. Pretty standard stuff. We can also do things like do simple numeric operations such as less than or equal to or greater than when we query. The same way that we can do the rating, finding it in an array, and the same way that we can do subdocuments, we can start combining these now. So let's do movies dot find movies released on or before, and let's do 2015 was a good year. Dot then console.log. So in this call, what we're saying is find movies released on or before is this one. What we're doing is we're going to be querying on info.release to see when the movies were released, and we're saying perform the less than or equal to operation on that field. In this case, we wanted to do less than or equal to a starting year, and so anything released on or before 2015 is a match. So we get The Last Samurai because it was in 2013. Inception, it was 2015. Batman, it was 2012. Kingsman, which was 2015. Well, that's not the right date for Inception, but I'll figure that out. Was it really 2015? Anyway, so we could also do that with greater than, or equal to, or less than. So all these are just the similar ways of doing different mathematical different comparative operations. Now what we can also do is we can compare things. We can also say, we can do things like and, or we can do things like and, or do things like or operations, where we provide arrays of operations and it will do either all of them or find documents that match all the operations we say, or documents that match only one of the operations, that match one or more of them that we say. So if we wanted to do find movies, director, or year, Christopher Nolan, or 2015, what we do is find movies with director or year, dot then console.log. Accidentally called that function, but that's okay. There we go. So here we have something that was released in 2015, even though Matthew Vaughn was the director. Here we have something 2012, but Christopher Nolan directed, so it matched. So as long as it matches one of those two, when we use find match movies with directors or year, it'll match. And the syntax for that is just describing it $or. Now if you notice, everything Mongo related for operations is a $sign in front of it. And we did two documents inside of it, two objects inside that described how we wanted to match. We could also do basic string searching. Now when I say basic string searching, I mean there's a way of using Mongo to actually perform JavaScript on every single document in the cursor. This is very, very slow. So not really recommended. In the Node driver, it's also a little difficult to get going because you have to type in JavaScript in a string and you have to manually concatenate your string. Now, say we wanted to update our title. We still have easy updating of just updating by, when we wanted to update the title, now we want to stop querying the document and updating it by replacing it all. We just want to update one field, and these updates are actually atomic. So meaning that they'll happen and nothing else will happen to that document at that time. Now, when you want to specify what fields you want to set and update, you use this format for MongoDB's update. You still pass your find description object, but then when you set your update object, you use the special parameter, the operation called $set. So just set, really. And then we pass it a document that describes the field we want to update or add and the new value that it would have. So let's take a look at what happens when we rename. Let's see what happens when we rename Kingsman, the Secret Service, to just Kingsman. So movies.update title, 4 is our ID, and we'll just rename it Kingsman.then console.log. Well, that was easy. Now Kingsman, ID of 4, is just called Kingsman. We didn't have to update anything here. We didn't have to pass in all these things back. It only updated the field we told it to, now that we're using the set operation. The same thing goes if we want to update a subdocument. What we can also do is we can use the increment operator to increment in MongoDB to bump something up or down by some value. In our case, we would increment by 1, just for the sake of a demonstration. We could also multiply values positively or negative. So if you wanted to double a rating, we would just multiply it by 2. Now, what you could also do in MongoDB is unset ratings, unset anything, which means you would just remove the field from the document entirely. This will not be particularly useful for now. We can also do things such as updating values to a min or a maximum value. Now that means if we are updating to a minimum rate, to a minimum value that is higher, if the current value rather is higher than the new value, it will update to the new value. Otherwise, it will stay as is. So really what it does is says is the minimum of the current rating and the new rating, set this field equal to this value. So that's a little useful, a little not. I can't think of a situation where you'd use it off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are many out there. The same thing with max. It would take the max between the new rating and the current rating, and it would set the field of rating equal to whatever the max is between those two. Now we could also do things such as finding by entries in an array. So if we wanted to do movie.findByCast, what we can do is, let's see who's in, let's see Leonardo DiCaprio. Let's see what movies he was in. Oh, .then console.log. What? Oh, I misspelled his name. Capitalization matters. So let's see what happens when we find by Leo. Oh, I was saying Leonardo. Leonardo. Oh, Leo. Now that you got the Oscar, you're hiding from the world. So when we do find by cast, what we're going to say is look for entries in the look for documents that have a cast rate that have in their cast Leonardo DiCaprio. Now this, when you find by this, all you have to do is provide the one name, and it'll search through, if it's an array, the entire array for a match. So nothing really too complex. But when your array contains actual objects, what you have to do is provide reviews, which is the array name, and then the reviewer, which is the field name, to match on. So if we wanted to find by reviewer Sally, or definitely not Leo actually, to find somebody a little suspicious, let's do movies.findByReviewerName. Forgot my quotations. .then console.log. What you'd see is that Inception got a review because it's not showing up. Hold on. Let me print out all the reviews. Function. Let's make a little quick function. Oof. Matching console.log movies of 0. Matching of 0. Okay, so now we can see the reviews because it's not that deeply nested because we're just printing out the object now. So here you'll see that there's a review by someone that's called definitely not Leo, who maybe might be Leonardo DiCaprio in fact, saying that Leo should have won an Oscar for this movie, Inception, which he should have. Now we do this by passing, So when we scan an array, in most cases what we do is we just put in the array name, and now that we're looking for a subdocument, we'll just put in the subdocument field name. Because it'll see reviews as an array, it'll say, okay, find everything in reviews with a reviewer that has this name. So it's fairly simple to query by on these names. And we can actually combine all the operations from before. We could say reviews.reviewer. Is variable in, and then say whatever that data is that we want him in. So definitely whatever, and then it would match on a field, for example, throughout an array rather, for any matches and so on. So these queries can grow very quick and very complex, but very powerful. Updates are pretty similar with arrays, pretty simple rather with arrays. So you can do set operations, which set operations treat arrays as sets and not arrays. So a set in our case, it just does not add things if they are already in the array. So if I wanted to do movies.addCastMember if not exists and pass it by to number 4, we'll just say. I know there's an ID of 4. And we add Matthew McConaughey. Then console.log. We'll see that in our cast for Kingsman now, Matthew McConaughey is in there. Now normally, when you add entries to an array over and over, they start adding, but because they keep adding. But because we're using an add to set operation instead of, notice, an update doesn't have to have the $set value, it could be add to set or other things, we only get one Matthew McConaughey, which is very thankful because the world really can't handle more than one Matthew McConaughey. Now, if we did add cast member, so add cast member allow duplicates to 4 and did Matthew McConaughey, then console.log to log the result, you notice we start getting more and more Matthew McConaughey's than we can handle. This is a bad thing. We can't really have that many Matthew McConaughey's. The world just can't handle them. We could do operations such as popping cast members, popping first cast members. So you can pop from the start of an array by passing the array name with a -1 value, and that will tell you which direction to pop. So popping 1 is the positive side of the array, popping -1 is popping from the start. You can remove cast members just by using the pull operation. Now if you've added Matthew McConaughey 5 times, for example, we would have to remove him 5 times. There's no, what the hell? Oh, it's movies dot remove cast member Matthew McConaughey. Let's get rid of some Matthew McConaughey. Console.log. Oh, yeah, I forgot the ID. So from number 4, from ID of 4, let's start removing Matthew McConaughey. Oh, there he is. He's gone. Oh. Apparently I have a typo in this as well. So for remove review, so it looks like, let me try that over again. That was weird. So we add him. Let's add him twice. So apparently there's a typo in this. I'm going to pull it right now. Pushing that up right now. Sorry about that, guys. So the pull all, when you use pull all, just going off memory now, it'll pull all things that are in an array you provide. In our case, when you pull Matthew McConaughey from the cast, apparently we can pull all the Matthew McConaughey's from the cast at once. So we can also do things like remove a review. Now, removing a review is the most complicated sort of operation you should be doing for this course, generally speaking, with MongoDB. To pull a review, you have to look at what you've got. You've got an array you've got a document for the movie. You've got an array full of reviews, and every review has an identifier. It's an object, so it has a whole entire identifier. So let's take a look, and let's just grab this ID and remove this review from Alexander. So what we can do is movies, remove review, ID of 4, review ID of this, then console.log. And then what you get there is the review has been pulled. So let's take a look at how we go through this. Now first things first, we're just matching based on the movie ID, so we're only updating this. Then we're using the pull operation to remove an element from an array. Our array is reviews, and we're going to pass it a document describing how to match what reviews to pull. In our case, we're passing a review ID. So we're going to pass the review ID and remove all that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to just follow off by resolving the promise and returning a new promise that gets the new movie. So that's what you can do with advanced MongoDB. There's more, and there's even more advanced Mongo, especially when you get to server configurations and setting up Mongo in a cluster in the cloud. But for the sake of this course, that's what we care about with MongoDB. All right, everybody, that should be pretty helpful. Have a great day.